No, it's good. There's money in this unit. It's under all the trash, but it's in there.
We swooped in and got a $300 locker. Now I'm calling in the sidekicks.
I need you guys right here in the action.
He was the young gun of A&E's storage wars, known for his high-stakes bidding and the fiery chemistry he shared with his partner, Brandi Passante.
You ready for this?
I'm ready, Jarrod.
I spent $3 grand on this unit, but it's a small price to pay if I can save Long Beach and prove Brandi wrong.
Brandi, come a little closer, please.
For over a decade, Jarrod Schulz was a staple of reality TV, turning abandoned lockers into a mini empire. But recently, there have not been any auctions, and Jarrod has vanished from the spotlight. What led to his sudden departure from the show? And where is he now? The origin of the Young Guns. Before the name Jarrod Schulz meant anything to anyone with a remote control, he was just another guy in California trying not to go broke. It was 1999, and he was working at a carpet cleaning outfit. It was at this spot that the whole story truly kicked off, because that is where he met Brandi Passante. Jarrod was actually the manager at the time. When Brandi got hired, he was technically her boss. Jarrod has even joked that they weren't really supposed to be dating since he was in charge. But he was persistent, and eventually he won her over. And they became two people just working together, totally clueless that they would one day be famous. Things got rocky pretty fast, though. When the economy took a massive hit in the mid-2000s, Jarrod and Brandi were right there in the thick of it. The housing market was a mess. Jobs were disappearing, and they were scrambling to keep their heads above water. They did not have a safety net. All they had was bills and a lot of stress. But more importantly, they had 2 kids to feed. They needed a hustle, and they needed it to pay off fast. They finally caught a break when Jarrod's aunt informed them of an opportunity. She was running a public storage facility and told him he should come by and see how the auctions worked. Back then, bidding on lockers was not some cool mainstream thing people did for fun. It was a dirty, sweaty, and risky business. But for a guy like Jarrod, who always had a bit of a gambler's heart, it was perfect. He loved the rush. He loved the idea that he could spend a few $100 and maybe, just maybe, find something worth thousands. They decided to put everything they had into this new life. They opened up a thrift store in Orange, California, called Now and Then. It was a simple setup. Jarrod would go out to these dusty auctions, bid on the lockers, and haul the goods back to the shop. Then, Brandi would try to sell them. It was a real grind. They spent their days digging through old boxes and praying they did not just buy a room full of literal trash. Jarrod was the loose cannon who wanted to buy every locker he saw, and Brandi was the voice of reason, trying to keep them from losing their shirts. They were just a scrappy couple with a big truck, but the world was about to find out that their constant bickering was actually pure gold. And the crazy part is that when the TV producers first showed up, they were not even looking for a couple. They were looking for something else entirely. Stardom and the A&E breakthrough. So, how does a guy selling used furniture in Orange County end up on every TV screen in America? It was 2010, and the folks at A&E were hunting for a hit. They wanted a show about the weird world of storage auctions, but they weren't looking for a power couple. In fact, they weren't looking for Brandi at all. The producers originally showed up to an auction in Harbor City just to talk to Jarrod. They thought he had a cool look and liked his all-in attitude. But then the cameras started rolling, and Brandi walked up. The producers watched the two of them go at it. Jarrod wanted to bid on everything that looked halfway decent, and Brandi was right there to tell him he was being a knucklehead. They were bickering, laughing, and stressed out all at the same time. The producers basically stopped what they were doing and realized the auction was just the background. The real show was the fire between these two. They had this us-against-the-world vibe, even when they were arguing over a dusty box of old toys. Just like that, The Young Guns was born. When Storage Wars finally aired, Jarrod became an overnight star. People loved him because he wasn't some polished TV personality. He was a guy in a ball cap and a black t-shirt who looked like he just stepped off a construction site. He was the underdog. While the older pros like Daryl Sheets or Dave Hester had been doing this for decades, Jarrod was the new kid on the block, willing to take the big risks. He leaned hard into that risk-taker brand. Every time a door went up, you knew Jarrod was going to try and outbid everyone just to prove a point. He brought this high-energy spirit to the show that made it addictive to watch. The show became a massive monster. Millions of people were tuning in every week to see what Jarrod would find. Suddenly, people were showing up at their little thrift store in Orange, California, not even to buy stuff, but just to get an autograph or a picture with the guy they saw on TV. Jarrod went from worrying about his bank account to being the face of a franchise. He was living the dream. He had the fame, the business was booming, and he was doing it all with his partner by his side. But as any reality star will tell you, being famous for your personal life is a double-edged sword. The more the fans saw the young guns on screen, the more they wanted to know what was happening when the cameras weren't there. And pretty soon, the network decided that 30 minutes of auction hunting just wasn't enough to satisfy the crowd. Married to the job. By 2014, Jarrod was a full-blown celebrity. Storage Wars was a juggernaut, and Jarrod and Brandi were the clear breakout stars. They had this relatable, messy, and funny dynamic that people just couldn't get enough of. Because of that, A&E decided to go all in. They gave the couple their very own spin-off show called Brandi and Jarrod, Married to the Job. The title of the show was actually a bit of a wink to the fans. See, for years, everyone just assumed they were husband and wife. They lived together, they had kids together, and they bickered like they had been married for 50 years. But the catch is, they weren't actually married. The spin-off show leaned into this big time. The whole plot of the series centered around Jarrod finally getting around to popping the question and the chaos of planning a wedding. It was peak fame for Jarrod, and just like that, he was everywhere. One minute he was digging through a pile of rusty tools, and the next, he was on a red carpet or doing interviews for major magazines. The show portrayed him as the lovable, slightly stubborn guy trying to balance his growing business with his family life. Fans felt like they were part of the family. They watched Jarrod take the kids to the park and then watched him try to negotiate a deal for a vintage motorcycle. But behind the scenes, the pressure was starting to mount. Being a reality star is a weird gig. You aren't just an actor playing a character, you are playing yourself. That means you have to be camera-ready all the time. Everywhere Jarrod went, people expected him to be the young gun. At the same time, their actual business, the now-and-then thrift store, was becoming a tourist destination. It sounds like a dream, but it's hard to run a serious business when hundreds of people are dropping by just to take selfies and look at you like you're an animal in a zoo. Jarrod was also busy building his own personal brand during this time. He was leaning into his brand image, wearing his own gear, and trying to prove he was more than just a guy on a TV show. He was an entrepreneur, a father, and a TV lead all at once. For a while, it looked like he was on top of the world. He had successfully turned a dusty hobby into a multi-million-dollar brand. However, the married to the job lifestyle started to blur the lines between what was real and what was for the cameras. When you spend your whole day performing your relationship for a crew of 20 people, it's bound to take a toll. The fans saw a happy, squabbling couple headed for the altar, but in reality, the cracks were starting to form. The very things that made them great TV were starting to weigh heavy on their actual lives. At the height of his fame, Jarrod was a king of reality TV, but maintaining that crown was getting harder by the day. And while everyone was focused on the wedding bells and the big auction wins, Jarrod was also pouring a lot of his heart into a side project that had nothing to do with storage units or TV cameras. Outlaw Apparel. Jarrod kept pouring his heart and soul into his family and the show, but he was also hard on a passion project that had nothing to do with dusty lockers. If you watched the show closely, you probably noticed that he almost never wore a plain t-shirt. Instead, he was always decked out in gear featuring bold logos, handcuffs, or skulls. That wasn't just a style choice, but a clever business move. He was wearing his own brand, Outlaw Apparel. Jarrod actually started this company way back in 2002, long before the TV cameras ever found him. The idea was all about living life on your own terms. He wanted to create clothes for people who felt like rebels, the kind of folks who didn't want to fit into a boring corporate mold. It started small, mostly just t-shirts and hats he'd sell to friends or out of the back of his truck. But once Storage Wars took off, Outlaw Apparel turned into a massive marketing machine. Every single episode of the show basically served as a free commercial for his brand. Fans loved the edgy rock and roll vibe, and soon, people all over the world wanted to look like the young gun. At its peak, the brand wasn't just an online shop. Jarrod actually had a custom 24-foot trailer that he used as a mobile store. He would haul that thing to flea markets and events, turning his TV fame into real-world sales. It was his way of proving he wasn't just a reality star. He was a designer with a vision. He really put his heart into the designs. They were simple, mostly black and white, but they sent a clear message. It was about being tough and being an outlaw. For a guy who had faced some real-life struggles and legal trouble in his younger years, the brand felt authentic because it was a reflection of who he was. But as the years went on, the buzz started to fade. Running a clothing line is a brutal business, and it takes a lot of constant work to keep it fresh. By 2018, the brand began a closeout sale, and things went quiet. If you try to visit the original website today, you won't find any cool hoodies or hats. Instead, the domain is often listed for sale or just leads to a dead end. Like many things in Jarrod's life during that time, the outlaw era was starting to wind down. Cracks in the empire. For a long time, it felt like Jarrod and Brandi were invincible.
It's obvious that Jarrod and Brandi are sort of the Brad and Angelina of the storage locker circuit. And it's every bit as glamorous. It's actually a red, mat, an all-weather mat. I wouldn't call it a red carpet, but they grace us with their presence.
They had the hit show, the spin-off, and their very own home base, the Now and Then thrift store in Orange, California. This store was not just a set for the cameras. It was the heart of their business. It was where the Young Guns brand actually lived. Fans would drive for hours just to walk through those doors, hoping to spot Jarrod hauling in a new find, or Brandi behind the counter. For a few years, business was booming. They even opened a second location in Long Beach because things were going so well. But as the old saying goes, what goes up must come down. Running a real business while being a full-time TV star is a lot harder than it looks on screen. Think about it. To keep a thrift store stocked, you have to be out at auctions almost every single day. But to film a show like Storage Wars, you have to spend hours and hours waiting for cameras to set up, doing interviews, and traveling from city to city. Jarrod was pulled in two different directions. He wanted to be the guy on the ground finding the deals, but he also had to be the star the network needed. Slowly, everything started to go downhill. The Long Beach store was the first to go. It had only been open for about a year before they had to shut it down in 2014. That was a big warning sign. Then, the pressure hit the original shop in Orange. Rent in California is not cheap, and keeping a massive store full of inventory takes a lot of staff and a lot of work. Fans started to notice that when they visited, the shelves weren't as full as they used to be. The magic of the show was starting to clash with the cold reality of paying the bills. By early 2016, the doors to Now and Then closed for good. It was a huge blow to their image. For years, the store had been proof that they were real experts who knew how to turn a profit. Without the shop, they were just two people bidding on lockers with nowhere to put the stuff. Jarrod tried to keep things moving, but the loss of the store felt like the end of an era. It was the first major piece of their empire to crumble, and unfortunately, it wouldn't be the last. The secret split. For years, the biggest draw of Storage Wars was the chemistry between Jarrod and Brandi. They were the couple that everyone identified with. They fought over money, disagreed on furniture, and balanced each other out perfectly. Fans didn't just tune in for the auctions, they tuned in to see the Young Guns dynamic. So, when 2018 rolled around, nobody had any clue that the most famous duo in the storage world had quietly called it quits. It is actually pretty impressive how they pulled it off. In an age where every celebrity post reveals their whole life on Instagram, Jarrod and Brandi managed to keep their breakup a total secret for nearly 2 years. They stopped being a couple in their private lives, but for the rest of the world, nothing seemed to have changed. They were still the face of the brand, and they still appeared to be the same team everyone loved. The truth didn't actually come out until the season 13 premiere in 2021. When the cameras finally caught up with them, the vibe was completely different. Instead of driving to the auction in the same truck, they showed up separately. The producers didn't hide it anymore. Brandi looked at the camera and flat out said that she and Jarrod weren't a couple anymore. She even joked that she was the one who kept the brains of the operation. Seeing them bid against each other was a huge shock for the fans. For over a decade, they had worked together to beat guys like Dave Hester. Now, they were each other's biggest rivals. Jarrod was still his usual self, but you could feel the tension through the screen. There were no more shared victories. If Jarrod won a locker, it meant Brandi lost out, and vice versa. It was awkward, tense, and it was a little bit sad for people who had watched them grow up on TV. Jarrod tried to play it off like it was no big deal. He leaned into his lone wolf persona, acting like he was happy to finally be calling all the shots without having to check with anyone else first. But you could tell things were different. The playful bickering had turned into sharp stabs. The young guns weren't a team anymore. They were just two people who used to know each other, fighting over a room full of old boxes. This split was the beginning of the end for Jarrod's time on the show. Without the husband and wife dynamic to ground him, his aggressive bidding style started to feel different to the audience. And while the breakup was a huge pill for fans to swallow, it was nothing compared to the drama that was about to go down at a local bar in Orange County. Legal turmoil and the 2021 incident. While fans were still processing the news of the secret split, the drama moved from the auction yard to the real world in a way that nobody expected. On April 30th, 2021, a night out at a bar in Lake Forest, California, turned into a major legal mess for Jarrod. Here is what went down according to the police reports. Brandi was at the bar hanging out with some of her friends when Jarrod showed up. Things got heated pretty quickly. They started arguing, and witnesses said the exchange was anything but friendly. Brandi reportedly told Jarrod he should just leave, but he did not. Instead, the situation escalated. It was alleged that Jarrod pushed Brandi twice while yelling at her and her group of friends. By the time the police arrived at the bar, Jarrod and his buddies were already gone. But the story did not end there. A few days later, Jarrod actually sat down with the cops to give his side of the story. He flat out denied ever putting his hands on Brandi. However, the Orange County District Attorney's Office looked at the evidence and decided to move forward anyway. They officially charged Jarrod with 1 count of misdemeanor domestic violence battery.
Jarrod and Brandi ran into each other at an Orange County bar and started a heated argument in April 2021. The Orange County District Attorney's Office charged him with 1 count of misdemeanor domestic violence battery.
This was a huge turning point. Up until then, Jarrod was the lovable rebel of reality TV. Now, he was facing serious criminal charges involving the mother of his children and his longtime partner. The news spread like wildfire, and for the first time in over a decade, Jarrod's future in the spotlight looked very shaky. A&E, the network behind Storage Wars, did not stay quiet for long. They reportedly launched an internal investigation to figure out what really happened and whether Jarrod should stay on the show. While they never made a big public announcement about firing him, the results spoke for themselves. Jarrod did not return for the next season. After being the face of the franchise for 13 seasons, he was suddenly gone. His exit was quite low-key, but the impact was massive. With his TV career seemingly over and his reputation in tatters, Jarrod had to figure out what to do with his life, now that the bidding wars were a thing of the past. Life after Storage Wars. After the cameras stopped rolling and the legal dust began to settle, Jarrod Schulz found himself at a crossroads. For over a decade, his life had been about digging through dusty units and flipping junk for a profit. But with the show behind him and his famous thrift store closed, he needed a new playground. He decided to trade the storage locker for something a bit more social, the bar business. In April 2019, Jarrod officially took over ownership of the Rush Bar and Grill in Lake Forest, California. This wasn't a brand new spot he built from the ground up. It was an established neighborhood hangout that had been around since 2015. Jarrod saw it as the perfect next chapter. He wanted to take his entrepreneur hat and wear it in a place where people could grab a cold beer and a burger rather than bidding on a mystery box. If you visit the Rush today, you can tell right away that it's Jarrod's place. It has that same edgy, no-nonsense vibe he brought to Storage Wars. It's a classic neighborhood joint with big screens for the game, live music on the weekends, and a menu full of comfort food. For Jarrod, this was a huge change. Instead of being a guy people watched on a screen, he became a guy people could actually run into at the end of the bar. But running a bar is a lot like an auction. You never really know what kind of drama is going to walk through the door. While the bar was meant to be a fresh start, it also became the site of some of his most difficult public moments, including that 2021 incident we talked about. Despite the headlines, Jarrod has stayed focused on keeping the business alive. He uses his social media to promote St. Patrick's Day parties, live bands, Taco Tuesdays, and other interesting events or holidays. It's clear that Jarrod has stepped away from the storage hunter life almost entirely. And for a guy who always loved the rush of the gamble, the name of the bar fits him perfectly. Being the boss of a local grill is a much quieter life than being a global reality TV star, but it seems to be where Jarrod is most comfortable these days. He's traded the spotlight for the neon glow of a bar sign, trying to rebuild his life, one shift at a time. Personal life today. Although Jarrod has definitely been lying low lately, his personal life hasn't stayed completely out of the headlines. After the big split with Brandi became public, everyone wanted to know if the young gun was going to stay single or find someone new. As it turns out, he didn't wait very long to move on. Back in early 2020, Jarrod went public with his new girlfriend, Rochelle Beckman. He shared a photo of the two of them looking happy during a trip to Disneyland, and for a while, it seemed like life was finally getting back on track for him. Rochelle actually worked as a bartender at his bar, The Rush. While Jarrod doesn't post much on social media these days, their photos together showed a side of him that fans rarely saw on TV. A guy who looked relaxed and genuinely happy. But while Jarrod was finding a new partner, things on the home front were a bit more complicated.
They're a sweet couple. You know, when I met them, I hadn't ever really seen Brandi. Jarrod was coming around to the auction, so I'd known him for about a year and a half or so, and he would look at a unit, and when he wanted to go for it, he'd go for it.
Jarrod and Brandi have two kids, Cameron and Peyton, who are both adults now. If you follow Brandi on Instagram, you see her posting about them all the time. She celebrated Cameron's 21st birthday recently and has shared how proud she is of his work in filmmaking. However, Jarrod is a lot more private about his relationship with them. In fact, Brandi hasn't held back when talking about the family dynamic. She has openly called herself the primary caregiver and has even made comments suggesting that Jarrod wasn't always the most present father. She once famously joked that she was the scary dad in the house because he wasn't there to do it. Whether that's the whole truth or just one side of a messy breakup, it's clear that the perfect family image we saw in their spin-off show is a thing of the past. Today, Jarrod seems content to stay out of the drama as much as possible. He isn't chasing fame anymore, and he isn't trying to be a TV star. He's just a guy running his bar and living his life with Rochelle. It's a far cry from the high-energy auctions and the constant bickering that made him famous. But for Jarrod, maybe a quieter life is exactly what he needed. Still, even though he's stepped away from the cameras, people can't help but wonder if we've seen the last of the young gun. There are still whispers about whether he'd ever come back to the world of bidding wars. The legacy of the young gun. Jarrod Schulz's legacy in the world of reality TV is a complicated one. He will always be remembered as one half of the Young Guns, the scrappy couple that helped turn Storage Wars into a global hit. For years, he was the guy who represented the small business owner, the risk taker, and the underdog who wasn't afraid to go head-to-head with the big players. He showed the world that with a little bit of grit and a lot of confidence, you could turn a dusty locker into a career. But as the years have passed, That legacy has been clouded by the events that happened once the cameras went off. Jarrod's departure from the show in 2021 marked the end of an era for the franchise. While other original cast members like Barry Weiss and Dave Hester have made big, flashy returns to the show recently, Jarrod has stayed firmly in the background. His focus has changed from the thrill of the auction to the day-to-day grind of running a local bar. Even with the legal issues and the messy split from Brandi, many fans still miss the energy he brought to the screen. Jarrod recently teased followers on social media by saying the show just isn't the same without him, which immediately got the rumor mill spinning again. Is he just poking fun at his old job? Or is he actually testing the waters for a comeback? As of right now, Jarrod seems content living a quiet life in Lake Forest, away from the bidding wars and the spotlight. He went from a carpet cleaner to a superstar and finally back to a local businessman. It's a wild story that proves reality TV fame is often a lot more fragile than it looks on your screen. Now, we want to hear from you. Do you think Storage Wars lost its spark once Jarrod was gone for good? And if the network ever gave him a second chance, would you actually tune in to watch him bid again? Leave your answers in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoy this video, please click on the next one on your screen.